Good morning and welcome to day 2 of the second ASEAN Environmental Law Conference. Today we will have simultaneous interpretation in Chinese and English. If you would like to hear the Chinese channel, please do click on the interpretation button and select the channel on the bottom of your screen. The ASEAN Environmental Law Conference is hosted by the Asian Research Institute for Environmental Law in collaboration with the Asian Development Bank, the College of Law, the United Nations Environment Programme, and USAID, with the support from the Global Judicial Institute on the Environment, the Environmental Defenders Office, Earth Rights International, the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law, the National University of Singapore Asia Pacific Centre for Environmental Law, LexisNexis, the Macquarie University Centre for Environmental Law, Law Asia, the Indonesian Center for Environmental Law, the World Youth for Climate Justice, the Philippines Association of Law Students, and the Climate Reality Project. Thank you so much for joining us again today on day 2. My name is Georgina Lloyd, and I'm the Regional Coordinator for Environmental Governance in the Asia Pacific Regional Office for the United Nations Environment Programme. Today, we're going to have a series of sessions which explore crimes that affect the environment, from transboundary trafficking of wildlife to species protection and waste and air pollution. A 2018 report on the state of knowledge of crimes that seriously impact the environment. It was found that environmental crimes are recognized as some of the most profitable forms of transnational criminal activity. The monetary value of environmental crimes is broadly estimated to be between 91 and 259 billion US dollars annually. Most likely, this makes it the 4th largest criminal area in the world after drugs, counterfeiting, and human trafficking. A 2016 study by UNEP and Interpol, it was found that 84% of countries surveyed reported a convergence between environmental crime and other serious crimes, including corruption, 42%, counterfeiting, 39%, drug trafficking, 36%, cybercrime, 23%, and financial crime, 17%. And it's likely that much of this will have increased as a result of changes in approaches and modus operandi during the COVID pandemic. There are intrinsic links between environmental crimes and organized crime. In fact, organized environmental crime is increasingly becoming common, where environmental crimes are just one component of a syndicate's portfolio of crime investments. There are many drivers of environmental crimes, most notably economic benefits, substantial demand, and institutional and regulatory failures. However, enforcement officials continue to strive to address transboundary environmental crime. UNEP and our other partners, including the UN Office of Drugs and Crime, Interpol, the World Customs Organization, UNDP, and the CITES Secretariat, seek annually to showcase good practices in the fight against transboundary environmental crime through the Asia Environmental Enforcement Awards. And a quick plug that the nomination for this year's Enforcement Awards will open soon. So today in the sessions, we are going to discuss cases and examples of success, innovations, but also continuing challenges that need to be addressed, that need to support addressing environmental crime through the law. We are going to start this morning with a keynote address, which will set the stage for the discussions we will have on environmental crime. Amanda Cabrejo is an international legal professional who is a specialist in the emerging areas at the crossroads between environmental law, criminal justice, and human rights. Amanda has focused on legal and policy responses to environmental crime over the past 7 years, working for various organizations. She recently supported my office, the Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific of UNEP, as an environmental law expert. And previously before that, she was an associate legal officer with the law division of UNEP at its headquarters in Nairobi. Before joining UNEP, Amanda was a visiting researcher at the Center for Criminology of the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Amanda holds a PhD in law from Sorbonne Law School and she's a recipient of research prizes, including the prestigious Vendôme Prize in 2019, awarded by the French Ministry of Justice. She holds master's degrees in Spanish law, French law, comparative criminal law, and also a master's in international criminal law. I would now like to request that the keynote address by Amanda is broadcast. Thank you very much.
Greetings from South Africa, and more exactly Cape Town, at the very tip of the African continent. So it's a great pleasure to be part of the second ASEAN Environmental Law Conference, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me, the Asian Development Bank, the UN Environment Programme, the Asian Research Institute in Environmental Law, USAID, Reducing Demand for Wildlife, and other partners. So thank you very much. And what I'm going to do now is to give you a broad overview of environmental crime, looking at conceptual challenges and trends in legal approaches. And I hope this global overview will be useful to set the scene for the sessions happening today. So I'm going to share my slides, and we're starting from here. So conceptual challenges and legal approaches. And my first part on concept. So the challenge here is the definition of environmental crime, and looking at the legal definition, because you can also look at it as a broader phenomenon and use green criminology, which is very useful to understand the types of environmental crime and roots and many aspects. But if we look at the legal elements, so first, there's no universally agreed legal definition. That's the first challenge for us lawyers. What we've been using in this space has been, I would say, a working definition set by Interpol and UNEP in two recent reports. So looking at a collective term to describe illegal activities harming the environment. So we have an element of illegality, activities that are defined as illegal by national laws, and an element of harm to the environment, then aiming at benefiting individuals, groups, or companies. And here it's important to stress that companies, corporations, are very often the perpetrators of environmental crime. And we have to do more collectively and in terms of laws and policies to help companies in terms of prevention, in terms of understanding the issue, in terms of prevention, and then where those crimes are committed, where illegal timber is introduced in the legal chain of timber products, or for other products. We really have to work on corporate liability and corporate criminal liability, where the national legal frameworks allow for it. And here globally, we talk about activities that are exploiting, damaging, or trading in natural resources, including so serious crime and transnational organized crime. So this gives you an idea of what could be the elements of a global legal definition. And in terms of types of environmental crimes, so here you have quite an extensive list. So we're talking about wildlife crime, we're talking about forest illegal logging, we're talking about illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, illegal mining, also illegal trade and dumping in waste and chemicals, and illegal trade in ozone depleting substances and other pollution crimes. So what's interesting, very recent resolution from the UN General Assembly. So we're going toward maybe an international understanding and international definition, maybe. So this would be a first step in a resolution from the General Assembly from December last year on preventing and combating crimes that affect the environment. And here, more than a definition, it's more of a list of what's envisioned as being part of those crimes that affect the environment. So even a broader terms than environmental crime. So here we're looking at illegal trafficking, and wildlife is mentioned, timber is mentioned, hazardous waste, and precious metal and stone. So there's no direct mention of the fishery sector. There's no direct mention of chemicals, no direct mention of ozone depleting substances, but it's an open list with inter alia including. So that's an interesting first step and definitely a new development. Another new development is around the concept of ecocide. And I often get the question, is environmental crime the same as ecocide? So it's not an easy answer, and of course we could talk about this much longer. But basically, I just want to make a very quick point about ecocide. So first, that it's not a new concept as itself. It's a concept that emerged in the 70s. To talk about the consequences of the use of Agent Orange as a weapon of war during the Vietnam War. And from there, it's been integrated in a few national legal frameworks, including Vietnam, the first country to include it. There's a few debates now in European countries. And what's been interesting over the past year, it's a debate starting very much at the international level, because so at the international level, we don't have the concept of ecocide yet. It's not there in international laws. And there are very few elements that permit to look at the destruction of the environment as a very serious type of war crime. So that's under the Rome Statute, which is a text of the International Criminal Court. And there's some element in the Geneva Convention, but it's quite narrow in terms of scope. And you might have heard of a proposal coming from the Stop Ecocide Foundation that gathered a panel of international lawyers to work on a concept together, what could be a legal definition. So, so there's been this proposal, and I've put here the definition: unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and widespread or long-term damage to the environment being caused. So a very interesting debate. Definitely the issue is rising. But so ecocide would be a very specific type of environmental crime. That would be environmental crime that are so, so destructive, so intense that they amount to international crimes, meaning genocide, crime against humanity, war crime, and crime of aggression. And that would be handled either at the national level or at the international level. But that's just a part of what's a legal response to the diversity of environmental crimes. And I've put together here a diagram that I hope can be helpful to understand those different levels, how they work together. So yeah, we talk about environmental crime, one term, but actually there's many levels of infringement that we can think of. And sometimes people talk about different things. So we have to just reconcile all of that. So what I was just mentioning, the debate about ecocide, that's at the top level in terms of legal infringement, in terms of seriousness. At the level of ICL, International Criminal Law, that's where this debate is located. And then we have, at the level of national criminal law, prohibiting and defining a number of types of activities as very serious and as needing responses from criminal law, including the fact that you can put people in jail, basically, and also where national frameworks allow for a corporate liability, criminal corporate liabilities. They also sanction against corporations and businesses, including simply closing those companies. So those two levels in the red colors define criminal activities. So that would be the strict definition of environmental crime, criminal activities. And we can see at the broader level, illegal activities. So in yellow, so you would have a breach of, so for instance, hunting or fishing or timber activities conducted without the right licenses and authorization. So those activities are illegal, but maybe not considered as criminal in the national legal framework. And so that broader level of illegal activities is what is used in the definition I've mentioned before as a working definition and as a perspective from the UN General Assembly definition. And I added a lower level here of moral norms with a question mark, because we can also have political discourses or to simply consider that some legal activities are harming the environment and they should be not considered as legal anymore. So that can be a way to challenge the status quo. And that's why I've added those arrows on the left side to say those categories are not completely static. Things can move, and they do move through time, or they can also be different depending on the countries. In one place, one type of activity is not considered such a great harm or great challenge, and in another part it is a key issue, so it's criminal law that's being used to deal with it. So there's also all that complexity, that legal complexity to take into account. So I hope this little pyramid was helpful. And of course the law is changing also to adapt to constant evolving trends in this field. The criminals are always changing the modus operandi. There's new routes, there's new markets appearing. So there's all of that also to keep up with. And very quickly about the impact of environmental crime, one thing to remember is that it is quite huge. It's one of the 4 largest criminal areas in the world, with drugs, counterfeit, and human trafficking. And then, of course, it's hard to measure exactly the economic monetary value, but pretty important. And what's also very important, it's beyond the monetary value, is the harm caused to the environment and people. So impact on biodiversity, of course, species pushed to the brink of extinction, for instance. Climate crimes, we're talking about illegal logging and deforestation, but also traffic in ozone depleting substances, which is one of the challenge in Southeast Asia. And those substances used in refrigerants, for instance, for fridges or for air conditioning. So some of them are really damaging for the climate. Also impact on sustainable development. Because sustainable businesses and sustainable use of natural resources is challenged if nothing is left, basically, and challenged to stability in some countries. Impact on human health. So, of course, with chemicals, with waste, but we also seen in the context of the current COVID-19 pandemic that things can be pretty complex, and even if we don't have the full causal chain, we understand that disturbing wildlife and disturbing some ecosystems where species should be kept away from humans could be better for also humanity. So there's also quite a few initiatives in that space. And the cost in human lives, because we also have to remember that rangers are being killed every year protecting wildlife in national parks, especially on the African continent. And also environmental defenders were trying to protect the forest, protect the river, protect their communities, face incredible threats in many parts of the world, and are too often also facing death threats. So all of that is why we have to act against environmental crime. And now I'm going to very quickly mention a few legal approaches. What I just want to say is that the key is about having a holistic view. It's not just about environmental law, it's also about trade law and criminal law. And we have to combine all of that to really get to stop and fight environmental crime. And this is a reality we need at all levels, really to have a cross-sectoral approach in the lawmaking and also in the implementation, in enforcement, across the enforcement chain and at the national, regional, and international level. And I know those are going to be part of the questions today. And combining those different approaches, we can see that at the international level, where we have trade-related multilateral environmental agreements that look at protecting different natural resources, or looking at regulating waste and chemical trades and defining what's illegal and what's even criminal. And we also have convention on criminal justice that are very useful on organized crime and corruption that can be used in that space. And this led me to the need of strong legal framework at the national level. And here quickly a few images of recent useful reports. And then new resolutions at the international level, one in the context of the COP on the Convention on Corruption, and one in the context of the COP on the Convention on Organized Crimes that are specifically looking at environmental crimes. So this is very, very interesting. And those conventions basically led to that UN General Assembly, those resolutions led to that General Assembly resolution I mentioned before from the end of last year. So very interesting development that tell us, let's focus even more on corruption as a critical issue. And here I mentioned a few reports from UNODC, also from the Basel Institute on Governance that has a very interesting program on green corruption to really go deeper, look at this issue. How do we work on it? And here a report looking at Indonesia. And then the next thing is about money laundering. Of course, to say let's follow the money, it's easier said than done. But there's definitely a lot to do in that space and a lot to work on to identify, trace, freeze, and seize the proceeds of environmental crime. And basically, it's removing the financial incentive for the people and groups who are committing those crimes. So finally, also a few other legal trends we're seeing, the conservation litigation, very interesting other legal approach to look at liability lawsuits to focus on remedies. How do we focus on the harm that's being caused and how do we repair it? So I know there will be a speaker on that, and that's very exciting. And another interesting innovative approach. So I mentioned the ecocide debate at the level of international criminal law, but there's also attempts now to use what are the existing international crimes to find entry points to fight environmental crimes. So here, just to mention this communication by the group All Rise to look at deforestation in Brazil as part of crime against humanity. Against the population in Brazil. So also very interesting, innovative approach. And my last slide, just to say that we always have to remember that beyond legal innovation, a key to this complex issue is always to look at socioeconomic and behavior change. So of course, when we think of wildlife, demand reduction is critical. Laws and enforcement is not enough. If we can really work on changing the behaviors and cutting the demand, that would really create a change. And when we look at waste crime, which is also such a big issue in Southeast Asia, and now especially around plastic, so the legal and the illegal trade in plastic, it's to have any legal and enforcement response integrated in a circular economy approach, where we really look at the full chain from production, consumption to waste management and recycling, and how do we integrate the question of illegal trade in waste into that much bigger paradigm. So that's all for me today. Thank you so much, and I really wish you fruitful discussions with the different sessions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Amanda for that incredible presentation. And with that scene setting, we're now ready to move on to the rest of our sessions throughout the day. And so just sharing an overview of what we have to look forward to. And I invite everyone now to move into session 4, which will look at transboundary wildlife crime. And then we have session 5, which is going to look at protecting wildlife, followed by the special session from the World Commission on Environmental Law, and then session 6, which is going to look at waste and air pollution in the context of environmental crime. So thank you all once again for joining us on day 2, and please move back to the lobby now and then join session 4. Thank you.